Today on September 25th, Archangel Michael says, your sister did something that God can't ignore. Heaven is finally revealing it. God is exposing what she tried to hide. Open it immediately, my child. The night felt heavier than the sky itself, and even the air carried a hush that pressed against the walls of your room. A quiet vibration rose from the floorboards like a message traveling through wood and memory. Something long delayed now reached the doorway of your heart with the weight of truth. A letter you overlooked waited beneath a stack of bills, its edges softened by time. The ink bled slightly at the corners, as if the words had been crying in secret. You felt a tremor inside your chest as you touched the paper and sensed a story buried inside your family. A distant echo of a phone call lived inside that envelope, the kind that came late and left a mark. A promise and a betrayal walked together line by line, hidden between names and dates that once felt ordinary. Heaven guided your hand with a tenderness that still carried fire. When you broke the seal, a hush moved through the room as if a window had opened inside your spirit. The light on the paper looked like a path that refused to end. The first line carried your name like a prayer and a warning. Type Amen if you believe in God. The message did not accuse and it did not flatter, yet it spoke with a certainty that made your breath slow. A signature repeated in places it did not belong. A curve of a letter copied too perfectly, a date that slipped one day out of place. The wrongness moved like a shadow that could no longer hide behind the furniture of your life. You saw an account number, a property reference, a clause about guardianship that never reached your ears. A document was filed while you were grieving and the ink dried while your tears fell for someone who carried your blood. The timing formed a pattern that now rose like a tide. A faint scent of your childhood home drifted up, mixed with old paper and dust and a trace of lavender oil that your mother once loved. A letter held the weight of footsteps you remembered and footsteps you never heard. It felt like the past itself stood beside you and refused to leave. A set of keys was mentioned, keys you never received. Keys that opened a place beyond a gate your feet had not crossed for years. The words announced a transfer made while you were still choosing the flowers for a graveside. The quiet turned into a truth with a heartbeat. Type Amen if you believe in God. You traced the paragraphs again and found a number stamped beside a signature that belonged to the one who shares your last name. She had smiled as if the world were simple and she had hugged you in rooms too small for all the grief that lived there, yet her hands moved elsewhere with a different intention and now the veil lifted. A witness line contained a stranger who was not a stranger. Someone your sister knew from school, someone who owed her a favor. A seal gleamed in the corner like a coin dropped on a chapel floor. The title of a parcel and the contents of a safety box were redirected with quiet hands. Your breath steadied as another sheet appeared behind the first, almost transparent, a carbon copy of a choice you never knew was offered. A clause about medical authority mingled with a clause about assets, as if care and control were braided into a single rope. The rope now returned to your hands without a knot. The light in the room shifted and the shadows on the wall stood like witnesses who finally found their voices. Your name glowed in one corner, corrected in another, rearranged in a third. The rearrangement became a map of intention that could no longer hide in polite silence. Type Amen if you believe in God. A photograph slipped out and landed face down, and when you turned it over a smile stared back that felt borrowed. The date in the corner did not match the story you were told. The place in the background was a corridor of an office where signatures grow like vines. You remembered a day when your phone would not stop ringing and you silenced it to finish a simple task, then told yourself you would return to it later. Later never arrived because grief does not recognize schedule and love does not keep time the way paper does. The paper kept perfect time and recorded every second. A second letter appeared with your name spelled almost right, a single letter softened into a cousin of itself. The softness looked innocent, but innocence does not borrow identities. The paragraph beneath tied a bow around what she wanted and pretended it was a blessing for the family. The room felt smaller, but your soul felt larger because truth enlarges the spirit that receives it. You sensed a wind without windows, a current that moved through marrow and memory. Heaven did not shout, yet heaven would not be ignored. Type Amen if you believe in God. You stood and the floor creaked like an old friend telling you to listen closely. A letter spoke of a meeting at dusk, the kind held when honest people are eating dinner far away. The signatures came alive under your fingertips and shaped the missing evenings of your life. Your sister had always been good with details, and details here built a ladder she climbed without looking back. A name of a clerk appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again in a way that told a story without poetry. A box on the form was ticked for urgency, yet the urgency was never shared with you. There was a list of valuables taken from a house that still breathed your father's voice. A watch with a scratch at the 12, a ring with an engraving that only the family could understand. A folder of boundary maps from a land that holds your childhood. A list read like a catalogue of what loved ones protected. A receipt was stapled to the back, and the staples themselves were bent like the corners of an old prayer card. The date on the receipt matched the day your sister hugged you in a corridor that smelled like antiseptic and fear. The hug felt warm then, and now it felt like a curtain. Type Amen if you believe in God. The truth carried the softness of mercy and the firmness of consequence. Heaven did not come to destroy you, heaven came to set a bone that healed wrong. The setting would ache, and then you would walk without the limp that you learned from secrecy. You placed the letters in order, and the order produced a voice that spoke through ink and silence. The voice did not accuse your heart. It invited your heart into light while marking the lines that must not be crossed again. You could feel the difference between compassion and permission. My beloved child, the wind seemed to say with a tenderness that filled your ribs, your name felt safe inside the syllables of that address, like a candle cupped in steady hands. The candle burned with clarity, not with rage. Your steps turned toward a drawer that felt heavy than it looked. Inside, a set of photographs from holidays formed a second archive you never catalogued. The light in those photos taught you about innocence, and the shadows reminded you that innocence still needs wisdom. Type Amen if you believe in God. You found an old note written by your father. A brief instruction about fairness, that lived in half a sentence. The half-sentence carried more weight than paragraphs of legal language. His handwriting held a promise that the papers tried to erase and could not. A memory unfolded, the day your sister asked you to sign a card and slipped a document beneath, hoping your attention would scatter. Your signature never touched that page, and now the empty line spoke with a freedom that felt like sunlight. The plan missed its intended mark and reached the light instead. A pastel ribbon fell from the folder, the same color your sister wore on the day she told you everything was handled. The ribbon looked innocent, as ribbons always do. But it carried the scent of a room where decisions were made without you. The scent faded and the meaning remained. You knew a conversation was coming, not with shouting, not with threats, but with the gravity of truth. Gravity pulls, and gravity steadies, and gravity keeps a person from floating into the empty sky. The gravity in your chest told you that your life would not drift. Type Amen if you believe in God. A copy of it appeared at the bottom of the pile, and the copy did not match the words your father spoke at the kitchen table. A paragraph had been edited with a hand that learned from practice. The practice would end tonight because heaven drew the line. You felt a warmth in your palms as if justice were not a hammer but a hand reaching for yours. The hand did not yank you forward. It steadied you. The steadiness became the ground beneath your feet. A neighbor's name appeared in the margin like an accidental confession. The neighbor saw something and kept it for your sister in exchange for a favor that looked small and tasted bitter. Small choices can tilt entire houses, and the house now leaned toward light. You stacked the papers again and felt a spine form in the stack. The spine turned the pile into a book your life refused to keep closed. You opened it wider and saw the ending move toward you with clear eyes. Type Amen if you believe in God. You walked to the window and the night looked back with a calm that did not apologize. Calm does not erase storm. It gives shape to the aftermath. The aftermath introduced you to yourself without confusion. The silence in the room became a teacher that did not waste words. It taught you how to breathe without holding your breath for other people. It taught you how to bless without enabling what breaks the sacred. You remembered the day you were told to trust because family always protects. Family protects when family stands in truth, and truth now called your name with a steady rhythm. The rhythm guided your next step like a drum that never lies. Your sister's image rose in your mind, not as a villain from a fable, but as a human being carrying fear and hunger and a choice. Chose his wet history of ordinary days and of ordinary pedo. This paper now wrote a different ending because you chose the light. Type Amen if you believe in God. A drawer with a hidden compartment opened with a soft click. Your fingers finally learned. Inside, a small velvet pouch held the your mother promised to you in a summer conversation. The velvet carried the scent of a garden that always forgave. Beside the pouch, a key rested with a tag labeled by your father's hand, and the label called you by a nickname only he used. The key belonged to a box at a bank with a number that matched the document at the top of the stack. The circle closed with a precision that felt like love correcting what fear tried to twist. Paper cannot cry, yet some pages seemed wet at the edges. The wetness belonged to nights you spent alone believing silence was safety. Safety now wore a new face and walked into the room without knocking. The night outside changed tone and turned softer around the corners of the sky. The softness did not cancel the truth. It framed it. The frame made space for you to stand without shrinking. Type Amen if you believe in God. You turned to the mirror and saw a steadiness that surprised you. Strength did not look like iron. It looked like water that refuses to evaporate. The refusal was not stubborn pride. It was holy endurance. Your phone buzzed with a message from a contact you barely recognized. someone who handled papers and deadlines. The message mentioned a review and a correction already in motion. Heaven had moved while you read, and the movement left footprints. Behind the documents hid a small notebook with a list of dates, and each date matched a shift in your sister's smile. The list recorded a harvest from a field you did not own. The harvest now returned to the rightful soil. You placed your hand on the notebook and felt the pulse of your own life answer. The answer was not loud. It was rooted. Roots hold even in a storm that bends the tallest branches. Type Amen if you believe in God. A memory unfolded of a night when a lamp flickered as if someone had walked past. Unseen but present. The flicker now felt like a signal you had not learned to read. At night you read it with ease. The documents mentioned a foundation in your father's name that never reached the ground. The ground waited with patience that did not wither. Patience now bloomed as purpose. You reached for a pen and wrote your name with letters that did not tremble. Each stroke felt like a staircase you finally decided to climb. The staircase led out of a narrow hallway and into a room with windows on every wall. You breathed and the breath did not hide. It filled every corner. Corners stopped feeling like traps and started feeling like edges of a canvas. The canvas asked for color. And you carried color in your chest. Type Amen if you believe in God. You recalled a day at the river when your sister skipped stones and counted in a voice that sounded like laughter. Laughter can hold secrets that the river returns in time. The river returned a letter tonight and laid it at your feet. A transaction log appeared at the end of the pile with numbers that told stories even when mouths refused. The story was a path of withdrawals under the name of concern. Concern became control and control became theft. You did not hold rage like a weapon. You held clarity like a lantern. The lantern did not scorch the path. He revealed it. The revelation felt like morning arriving without an alarm. You spoke softly into the room and the room answered with peace. The peace did not erase consequence. It escorted it. Consequence walked with mercy and neither lagged behind. Type Amen if you believe in God. My beloved child, the air breathed again and the words reached the places in you that hid during the long season. The season changed and the leaves did not apologize for turning. Turning became a promise instead of a threat. You gathered the letters and placed them in a single folder. Then set the folder on your desk like a seed. Seeds look small until spring places her hand upon them. Spring already touched this seed with hands that do not fail. A path of steps took shape before you. Written in Kamik. Call the right keeper of records and show the dates that never matched. Then bring the witness who knows the corridor. Truth walks steadily and waits for you to tie your shoes. The corridor where she smiled no longer carried power over your heart. Your heart beat its own rhythm and the rhythm did not ask for permission. The rhythm honored love and guarded inheritance. Type Amen if you believe in God. You remembered how your sister learned to braid and you sat between her knees and trusted her hands. Trust is precious and truth protects trust even when it breaks arrangement. Arrangement will mend where honesty enters. You felt compassion for the moment fear took her throat and told her to hurry and compassion for the younger self that never learned a better way. Compassion did not erase the line that heaven drew. The line remained bright and protective. A phone call formed in your mind not as a battle but as a boundary. Boundaries speak quietly and hold firm when storms approach. The firm line in your voice would become a shelter for your future. Another paper at the bottom carried a notation from a clerk who refused to comply with a request that felt wrong. The refusal left a breadcrumb in the official log. Breadcrumbs now formed a path you could follow without strain. Type Amen if you believe in God. A storage unit number appeared and a spare key rested under a loose tile in the porch your father repaired every summer. The tile had shifted slightly like a wink from the past. You lifted it and the key glimmered like a promise fulfilled. Inside the unit, a box labeled with your initials waited with patience that never mocked your delay. The box contained letters and receipts and an original deed with a notation only you could recognize. The notation confirmed what the edited copy attempted to erase. You stood among rows of forgotten furniture and felt the presence of vows kept by those who loved you honestly. Honest love does not trip over truth, it walks with it. Walking with it tonight felt like a homecoming. You carried the box to the car and the night held its breath with you. Breath returned in waves that did not drown. Waves rolled in and washed the edges of old fear smooth. Type Amen if you believe in God. You drove through streets that once concealed more than they revealed. The lights along the road no longer felt like witness without courage. Courage now stood inside you and looked out from your eyes. When you reached home, the clock did not accuse you of being late. Time bowed to purpose and purpose filled the room. The room recognized your name and welcomed your steps. You arranged the contents on the table and the table felt like an altar to clarity. Clarity does not devour, it nourishes. You ate the bread of understanding and felt strength rise. Your sister's footsteps in memory soften. Softness did not mean forgetting, it meant releasing the grip of old confusion. Release became a door that opened both ways. Type Amen if you believe in God. The morning on the horizon promised a new order to the story. Order does not punish, it protects. Protection wrapped your rims like a warm shawl. You made a list of the calls and the visits and the signatures that needed the light. Light stands in every office just as it stands in a chapel. The standing light erased the shadows that once announced themselves as authority. You placed your father's ring on the table and felt the metal cool and honest. Metal does not lie about its weight and love does not lie about its cost. The cost had been counted and the receipt now carried your name. You folded the letters carefully and slid them into a clear sleeve. The sleeve would keep them intact during the journey ahead. The journey felt steady because heaven walked beside you. Type Amen if you believe in God. You breathed slowly and the breath matched the rhythm of a presence that never abandoned you. Presence can be quiet and still fill an entire room. A filling left no space for despair. Your sister's name drifted through your chest like a leaf carried on a gentle current. The current did not rage, indirect. Direction replaced drift and the map became simple. A final envelope remained sealed at the very bottom, stamped with a date that spoke like a bell. The bell did not startle, it summoned. You opened it and found a notarized correction already submitted by a soul who regretted a part in the scheme. The correction sat like a sunrise folded into paper. Sunrise does not apologize for ending the night. Night respects sunrise and steps aside. Type Amen if you believe in God. You gathered everything and placed it in a bag that once carried groceries and now carried destiny. Destiny does not rush those who honor it. Honor slowed your steps and made them sure. You sensed that tomorrow would meet you with open doors and clear pathways. A meeting would not require performance, only presence. Presence would bring victory shaped like alignment. A gentle strength wrapped itself around your shoulders like a cloak. The cloak did not hide you, it revealed you. Revelation entered your life without noise and took its seat at your table. The clock moved forward and you moved with it, not as a prisoner but as a partner. Partnership with truth feels like breath that never burns. Your lungs learned the rhythm and refuse to forget it. Type Amen if you believe in God. You looked once more at the title of the letter that began this night and felt no collapse inside your chest. Collapse had left and dignity had arrived. Dignity looked like a calm vase in a clean mirror. Outside, the street sighed and the trees adjusted their leaves as if making room for a promise. Promises kept do not shout at the sky, they keep the ground firm. Your ground held. You closed your eyes and saw the faces of those who loved you and those who tried to use you. Love held steady and you slipped away. Steadiness became your new inheritance. You placed your hand over your heart and felt the beat greet you like a friend. Friendship with your own life is a holy thing. Holiness stood without performance and simply stayed. Type Amen if you believe in God. If you wish to express your support further, you have the option to give super thanks with contributions of up to $20. The streetlights dimmed as the first lines of morning touched the edges of your curtains. Calm entered like a guest you had been preparing to welcome for years. Your breath met the calm and decided to stay steady. You reached for your list and let your finger rest on the first name. The keeper of records answered on the second ring and spoke with a clarity that matched your own. A review appointment opened on the same day as if the calendar had been waiting for truth. You gathered the folder, the receipts, the original deed, and the quiet evidence of altered lines. Every page felt lighter than last night because it no longer had to pull you backward. It carried you forward with the strength of alignment. A window opened and the air in your room shifted from heavy to kind. Kindness did not excuse what happened. It clarified what must happen next. Clarity took your hand and led you to the door. Type Amen if you believe in God. At the bank, the key warmed in your palm like a memory finding its place. The box slid open and presented a small envelope sealed with wax in your father's favorite color. The seal broke cleanly and revealed a short note, an inventory list, and a tiny recorder. You pressed play and a familiar voice filled the quiet vault. The words were simple and strong, naming the items, the intention for fairness, and the trust placed in the one who would act with courage. Courage gathered in your chest like a shoreline holding the sea. A soft scent of cedar rose from the paper, and for a moment the years folded like linens placed in order. Grief settled into love without sharp edges. Love pointed to the signature line your sister tried to mimic and could not. Behind the note, an original ledger listed dates, withdrawals, and a notation that matched the clerk's breadcrumb. The handwriting confirmed the path the documents wanted you to see. The path led to a door labeled correction. Type Amen if you believe in God. You walked out into the morning, and it greeted you with a brightness that did not glare. Brightness is not a weapon when it is honest. It is a lamp you carry without fear. At the records office, the corridor felt long and merciful at the same time. Your steps made a quiet rhythm that did not hesitate. The clerk met you at the counter with eyes that understood the weight of paper. Pages slid across the desk, and every page held a precise box for truth to stand. You marked what was real, initialed beside what was false, and signed where restoration could begin. A notary stamped the corner and lifted a burden without fanfare. Type Amen if you believe in God. A witness arrived, the same one whose refusal left the breadcrumb in the log. Your presence felt like a door stopping a wind that once slammed through the house. The door held steady while the stamp dried. A clerk thanked you for the order of the folder and the calm of your voice. Calm had not always lived with you, but tonight and today it moved in with both hands open. The hands blessed the work without theatrical words. Outside, your phone vibrated with a message from an attorney who had reviewed the scanned documents. The review confirmed the timing, the mismatch, and the line where intent bent away from love. The reply ended with steps that matched the ones already under your feet. Every step felt like a bridge plank set firmly into place. You did not look down for danger because the boards did not creak. They carried you toward completion with quiet confidence. Type Amen if you believe in God. A text from your sister appeared and asked to meet at a neutral place. The request did not rattle the rhythm you had won. It simply joined the days unfolding like a chapter arriving when the reader is ready. At the cafe, you chose a table near the window where the light could see both faces. You placed the folder on the table and kept your hands open. Open hands do not tremble when truth has already taken its seat. She arrived with a careful smile that stopped at the edge of her eyes. Silence settled first, not as punishment, but as architecture. Architecture made room for the next words to stand upright. You spoke boundaries in a tone that protected both of you from collapse. The words named the lines crossed and the path back across them. The path did not offer shortcuts, only steps. Type Amen if you believe in God. She nodded and the nod carried a weight the room could feel. Confession came in pieces shaped by fear and by habit, then steadied into full sentences that did not run. The ending of the confession opened the start of repair. You asked for restitution in the form of return, record, and respect for the will your father carried in his ordinary handwriting. The request did not bruise the air, it clarified it. Clarified air lets lungs learn again. An agreement took shape on paper, the cafe capped for invoices and deliveries. The details listed timelines, itemizations, witness confirmations, and an overrized apology attached to the public file. Accountability made the ink look clean. Your sister's shoulders fell as if releasing a backpack filled with stones. The stones rolled out and arranged themselves into a small, honest wall that would now keep things safe. Safety returned to your table without applause. Type Amen if you believe in God. You walked to the foundation office that had once been a title on a page and not a promise. The director listened and welcomed the corrected documents like rain in a dry season. Dry ground drank, and purpose sprouted. In your father's name, scholarships and repairs and food deliveries stood up like seedlings under a wide sky. The sky seemed to approve without word or spectacle. Approval wore the face of children laughing in hallways that smelled like paint and hope. The initial funds moved from the frozen account back into the rightful chow. The chow widened without flooding because structure guided it. Structure turned generosity into a river that knows its banks. You stood still for a moment in the lobby and felt the presence that has accompanied you from the start. Presence does not need volume when it is real, it simply abides. Type Amen if you believe in God. On your way home, a breeze lifted the corner of a flyer on a street pole and revealed a name from the clerk's log. The name matched the witness who would now stand beside you if a final confirmation were needed. Witnesses are anchors when weather changes. At home, you created a binder labeled with today's date and a title that honored truth. The spine clicked into place with a sound that felt like a promise being kept. Promises kept make houses quieter. You placed the ring and the deed in protective sleeves and returned the recorder to the envelope. The envelope slid into the binder like a chapter kept for safekeeping. Safekeeping is not hiding. It is stewardship. A quiet hunger reminded you that the body also needs care. You ate slowly and let your breath stay even. Evenness is not dullness when peace has finally arrived. Type Amen if you believe in God. Evening folded around you with a softness that did not erase consequence. Consequence stood in its proper place and guarded the border between yesterday and tomorrow. Borders are gifts when they are true. You wrote a simple letter addressed to the future, stating the steps taken, the corrections filed, and the intention to remain in light. The ink glided across the page without resistance. Resistance had already left the room. The house exhaled, and the familiar creak near the hallway answered like a memory choosing to bless instead of haunt. Blessing is not performance. It is alignment. Alignment taught your furniture to rest. You rested too, not as escape, but as obedience to the rhythm that heals. Healing made its home in your bones and asked for patience that does not pretend. Patience agreed and took the chair by the window. Type Amen if you believe in God. Morning arrived with letters in your inbox confirming filed corrections and updated records, each confirmation read like a lock clicking open to reveal an honest room. Honest rooms smell like light and paper. You printed the confirmations and slipped them into the binder behind the tab labeled completion. Completion did not boast. It bowed. Bowing felt like strength. The foundation sent a note announcing the first set of repairs funded in your father's honor. A roof would be fixed, a classroom repainted, and lunches delivered to those who had been choosing between hunger and pride. Pride stepped aside so dignity could enter. You felt the kind of peace that does not float. It stands. Standing peace is a friend that holds your coat while you wash your hands. Clean hands turn the page. Type Amen if you believe in God. Your sister sent a photograph of the items already returned to their place on your table. The watch gleamed at 12. The ring lay inside its velvet pouch, and the folder of boundary maps waited like a patient teacher. Teachers appear when the student becomes honest. You replied with a brief acknowledgement and another boundary stated with grace. Grace is firm when it stands for truth. Truth does not tremble when it is love. The notary forwarded the finalized affidavit of apology and attached it to the public record. Public record can be a bomb when it is accurate. Accuracy built a new hallway inside your life. The hallway ended at a door marked future, and the door stood unlocked. Unlocked doors are not invitations to chaos when the house is in order. Order greeted you with a clear smile. Type Amen if you believe in God. You walked through rooms that now matched your heartbeat. The shapes of the rooms remained. But the atmosphere had changed. Atmosphere matters when the soul has endured storm. A neighbor waved and offered a loaf of bread left over from a morning baking. The bread felt like an ordinary miracle placed on your counter. Ordinary miracles are the backbone of steady days. You wrote a note to yourself and placed it at the front of the binder. The note reminded you to keep tenderness without surrendering boundaries. Tenderness and boundaries shook hands like good neighbors. Late afternoon light rested on the floor in long, peaceful lines. Those lines drew a map toward evening without dread. Evening listened and agreed. Type Amen if you believe in God. You returned to the storage unit to take one last look at the shelf where the box had waited. The emptiness of the shelf did not feel like loss. It felt like fulfillment. On the drive back, you passed the old porch tile and smiled at the quiet secret it kept until you were ready. Secrets are not always deceptions when they guard goodwill. Goodwill had guarded you in ways you could now see. A message came from the director confirming the scholarship in your mother's favorite field. The scholarship carried her name into halls where young hands learn to mend. Mending holds the world together in places where eyes rarely look. Gratitude rose like a tide and did not crash. It lifted everything and put it down gently. Gently is powerful when it is real. Type Amen if you believe in God. Evening settled, and you opened the binder one more time. The pages did not ask for attention. They offered assurance. Assurance is what remains when performance leaves. You placed the binder on a shelf where you could reach it without strain. Reach matters, because wisdom should never be hard to touch. Touch taught your hands to bless your own life. A soft warmth moved through the house and gathered near the doorway. The doorway had seen arrivals and departures, and now it watched you stay. Staying can be holy when it honors truth. Outside, the trees tilted their leaves to drink the last light. Leaves know how to receive without apology. You learned from them and received the evening. Type Amen if you believe in God. Night drew its curtain without threat. Behind the curtain, the stars kept their quiet watch like faithful witnesses. Witnesses do not shout when they are sure. You placed your father's ring in a small dish and let your fingers rest on its edge. Ledel cooled your skin and steadied your pulse. Steadiness became your new inheritance. An email chimed with the final notation from the registry. Records corrected, signatures authenticated. Authority restored. Awards were Blaine and Privig. Laying can be beautiful when it carries freedom. You close your eyes and let the room hold you. The room did not promise perfection, only presence. Presence is enough when it is true. Type Amen if you believe in God. Morning will arrive again, and your steps will know the ground. Ground that remembers truth does not give way underfoot. You will walk it without flinching. The foundation will continue its quiet work while seasons turn. Turning no longer frightens you because you have learned the rhythm of repair. Repair is love with tools in its hands. Your sister will live with her choices and with the grace of your boundaries. Boundaries will guard both of you from repeating a pattern that once disguised itself as care. Care now wears its true name and stands in light. You will keep the key, the binder, and the calm that cannot be counterfeited. Calm will keep you too. Keeping each other is how futures are built. Type Amen if you believe in God. If you wish to express your support further, you have the option to give super thanks with contributions of up to $1.20. The calendar marked the day without fanfare, yet the folder on your desk gleamed like a quiet medal. A final notice arrived from the registry confirming every correction with stamps that looked like small suns. Suns do not argue with darkness, they end it. At the courthouse annex, the hallway smelled of paper and calm wood. A clerk guided you to a room where signatures become outcomes. Outcomes stood neatly in a row and waited for your name to reach them. The order was read in a steady voice that treated your story with dignity. Dignity gave the room a shape that no harm could collapse. A seal pressed into the page like a promise becoming flesh. For a heartbeat, you felt the ache of the months that brought you here. The ache did not pull you backward. It honored the miles under your feet. Those miles turned into wisdom that did not wobble. Type Amen if you believe in God. On your way out, you passed a bulletin board with notices pinned like small lanterns. One lantern carried the clerk's name who left the breadcrumb that saved a page from vanishing. You whispered thanks in a tone that rested. Back home, a padded envelope waited with careful handwriting. Inside, a small box held the watch with the scratch at 12 and a note written in a remorseful hand. Your sister's words did not try to soften the truth. They named what happened, and they named what would be set right without delay. Naming became a bridge that allowed two separate shores to stop shouting at water. You placed the note in the binder behind a tab labeled Repair. Repair is not a door that swings once. It is a hinge that learns how to hold steady. The hinge turned without squeal and held the day. Type Amen if you believe in God. A message from the foundation arrived like a bell that belongs to morning. The first classroom had been repainted, and a roof no longer leaked onto books that carried brave IDs. Brave IDs dried their pages in sunlight and waited for eager hands. An invitation came from the community center for a small gathering in your father's honor. The director promised no speeches and no spectacle. Gratitude would walk around the room in ordinary shoes and smile at everyone. You wore calm like a jacket and brought the ring in its velvet pouch. The velvet felt like the past kept properly and without dust. Properly kept love does not turn into ghosts. At the gathering, photographs hung from thin lines like small windows into bright days. Children laughed at a table where paper and crayons made new cities. The future leaned over their shoulders and approved a Type Amen if you believe in God. Later, you visited the land that raised your childhood footprints. The boundary markers stood where they belong, brushed clean and painted with a firm hand. Firmness here looked like kindness with backbone. A neighbor came to the fence with a thermos and 2 cups. The fence did not feel like a barrier. It felt like a line both sides respected. Respect made the conversation easy. You walked the perimeter in an afternoon that wrapped the earth in gold. Leaves offered shade like quiet friendship. Friendship does not demand, it accompanies. By the old tree, you found the stone where you once learned to count in your head while you waited for your sister to finish braiding your hair. Memory tasted different now, like tea with the right amount of sugar. Sweetness returned without pretending the past was perfect. Type Amen if you believe in God. A week later, the attorney sent a closing ledger that balanced like a well-tuned instrument. Every number found its rightful chair and sat down. Sitting down, the ledger exhaled and ceased to haunt. You returned the key to the safety box and kept a photocopy of the inventory in the binder. The binder's spine looked like a backbone that belonged to this season. Backbones keep people upright when storms throw their shoulders forward. A craftsman delivered a new lock for your front door and tightened the hinges that once complained at night. The door now closed with a soft certainty. Certainty became part of the house's language. You placed a small lamp on your desk and let it glow without explanation. The glow was not dramatic. It was dependable. Dependable light is the best kind of miracle. Type Amen if you believe in God. A parcel arrived from an old friend of the family who had left the city years ago. Inside lay your father's tool roll, smelling faintly of engine oil and orange soap. Tools remember the hands that taught them purpose. You unfolded the roll and touched the engraved initials worn smooth by time. Smoothness told stories of weekends that built shelves and tightened bolts. Those weekends felt like warm bread handed across a table. You used the smallest wrench to fix a loose handle on a cabinet your mother loved. The click of the final turn felt like a chord resolving at last. Resolutions do not need applause when they are true. In the evening, you brewed tea and watched steam rise like a blessing that knew your name. Names hold people in place when days try to blur. Your name stood firm and clear. Type Amen if you believe in God. The Foundation's second report arrived with photographs of smiles that did not fake their joy. A student held a certificate with careful pride, the kind that makes the world sturdier. Pride like this lifts every roof it stands under. You approved the next release with a hand that did not hesitate. Hesitation can be cautious wisdom or leftover fear. Today it was neither, and the path ahead was simple. A small table, you wrote a letter to future you. The letter promised to keep boundaries, honor fairness, and refuse any disguise that called itself love while taking what was not its own. Promises written clearly do not stumble. You sealed the letter and placed it in the binder under a tap-marked compass. Compasses do not shout, they point. The needle held steady even when you closed the cover. Type Amen if you believe in God. Your sister requested one more meeting, this time to return a file envelope she had found behind old linens. You agreed in a public garden where light had plenty of room. Room matters when truth needs space to breathe. She arrived early and placed the envelope on the bench without drama. Inside, you found a receipt and an index card with a code that unlocked a digital vault. The vault contained the last missing trail of transfers. Together, you walked through the steps of restoration that would finish the ledger once and for all. Finishing is different from ending. It sounds like a door that closes softly. The door closed and a corridor of peace opened. You parted with a blessing shaped like clarity. Clarity does not bend to perform. It stands and protects. Protection finally felt like a natural habit. Type Amen if you believe in God. At home, you cooked a simple meal and ate without the weight that used to share your chair. Chairs remember heaviness and they remember relief. Tonight they remembered relief. You opened the windows and let night air carry in the scent of rain. Rain on warm pavement smells like tomorrow getting ready. Tomorrow felt like a friend with sturdy hands. You took the ribbon that once marked a day of hidden choices and tied it around a new labeled grace with boundaries. The label was neat and honest. Honest labels keep lives organized. On the last page, you wrote the names of those who chose right when it was hard. Names lined up like lanterns kept full of oil. The night outside nodded and held its peace. Type Amen if you believe in God. The weeks that followed did not ask for spectacle. They asked for continuity, and you gave it. Continuity wrapped around your mornings like a scarf that belongs to you. You volunteered one afternoon at the classroom that smelled faintly of fresh paint and chalk. Small hands built paper bridges and learned that weight can be carried if the fold is right. Folds and bridges taught physics and hope at the same time. The director handed you a simple certificate of appreciation that felt light and perfect. Perfection here did not mean flawlessness. It meant fit. Fit brought a smile to your face without noise. You placed the certificate at the back of the binder behind a tab named Gratitude. Gratitude is a living archive that keeps hearts from rusting. Your heart stayed bright. Type Amen if you believe in God. One evening, the neighbor who once stood in the margin of your story brought over a basket of oranges. Oranges glowed like small suns in the kitchen light. Small suns are good company in winter. You exchanged a few words that were plain and kind. Plain words carry more weight when they are true. Kindness chose to stay and made itself useful. After they left, you juiced an orange and raised the glass to the ceiling without ceremony. You honored the stubborn goodness that kept pressing forward when the path was narrow. The taste was tart and sweet and exactly right. The night settled and you noticed how quiet the hinges remain. Quiet hinges mean the house trusts the hands that live in it. Trust felt native again. Type Amen if you believe in God. On a soft Sunday, you drove to the river that taught you patience when you were small. The water moved with authority that did not need to prove itself. Authorities like this rescue the heart from pretending. You skipped a stone and watched it kiss the surface again and again. Kisses without theft became your new definition of love. Love learned how to give without taking. A dragonfly hovered like a small emerald with wings. It landed on the stone at your feet and then lifted toward the open blue. Blue answered with silence that meant yes. You turned back toward the path with steps that did not rush. Rushing left your life when honesty came home. Home felt wide and breathable. Type Amen if you believe in God. You sorted the last of the boxes in the back room and found one labeled letters unsent. Inside, a younger version of you had written notes to a future that looked foggy then. Fog cleared, and the letters felt tender. You kept one and released the rest like birds that will always know how to find sky. The kept letter reminded you that courage grows in secret first. Secrets like that deserve to survive. On your desk, you set a small frame around a photo of you and your father fixing a porch step. The frame did not yield the memory, it simply held it in place. Held memories do not slide around and cut fingers. You closed the door to the back room and smiled at the way it latched without argument, latches like this urn. You had earned it. Type Amen if you believe in God. At twilight, you stood at your window and watched the street learn the rhythm of lamps turning on. Lamps are lessons written in eye. Lessons like these do not expire. You thought of the clerk, the witness, the neighbor, the director, and the child with the certificate. Each person had become a thread in a fabric that no longer tore at the edges. Edges now held their own. You placed your father's ring on your finger for the first time in a long time and noticed how it fit without squeezing. Fit is the gentle proof that a thing belongs. Belonging rested in your bones. The binder sat on the shelf, quiet and complete. completeness did not chow. It exhaled and let you live. Type Amen if you believe in God. If you wish to express your support further,